Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Trident Talks DFIR series. I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Ramey, one of the co-founders of IronGate Cybersecurity. Steve, thanks so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm good, Charlie. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. I'm good. Busy week. We were just saying just before this, it's kind of like founders, it's very hard to kind of find a little breathing space to actually take a step back and focus on the rest of the to-do list, right? But yeah, it's good. It's almost the weekend, so happy. Steve, before we dig into the successes of the business, would you like to just give a quick background on yourself and how you kind of got to where you are today?
Yeah, certainly. So prior to co-founding IronGate, I really spent the last 20 years as a cybersecurity consultant, pretty much before cybersecurity was even a term. So it's been helping organizations all across the world, all across industries, big and small, understand the effects that digital technology has within their business for things like misuse of resources or harassment between employees to the more intricate regulatory inquiries because we've misused or we're able to fudge some numbers in our accounting systems, all the way to the modern day threats against our businesses with APT and ransomware. So really, it's been helping these organizations really peel back what's happening, how it's happening, um, help legal teams understand, what this actually means so they can turn that into legal strategy. And then helping, the risk managers understand what controls you can actually put in place to mitigate some of these effects, whether it's policy and directives or it's actually a technical control that would detect the activity and outright block it from begin with. So I've been doing this for what I think is a long time. Because I mean, I think 20 years ago, you're talking about before the iPhone was released. I think Wi-Fi was just taking mainstream. I still remember my first job application. I had like a 20 page application I had to fill out by hand and mail it. So it's been a huge evolution watching those 20 years unfold with all the new technology that's been introduced.
Yeah, I bet you've seen some interesting things. I remember actually the first computer. It might have been the first computer like coming into our household, and you just press it, and it takes like 5 minutes to turn on. You hear the clicking, and it's just like a I don't know, was it like a black and green screen or something like that? But is what point did you have you always wanted to kind of run your own thing, or was there like a key moment in time where you thought, or like a certain situation you thought, right, okay, like we can do this. Let's start something up now.
Combination, right? I've had the pleasure of working for many different consulting firms, internally, externally, and so it's been a great experience seeing how all these different businesses are run. And again, this is the big four all the way down to several startups. So it's been a fun time with seeing how others run businesses, what they're doing. But really, when we look at kind of the modern stage, for me, it's more about solutions to your partners versus leveraging your partners for making that extra dollar or two. So really, when we talk about, are we doing something differently? We kind of are, right? We're still providing the core services to our clients, to our partners, but at the same time, we're really giving back to that same group with free consulting to them, double checking some of the questions that they have or answers they've received, to give them that level of kind of white glove touch where it's not just a transactional relationship, but really we want to see the cybersecurity community grow from experience with understanding all of the different investigations, the little subtleties of nuances of these investigations so that they can pick up on it too. And so that's really where we differentiate ourselves because we're able to drive that information back into our partners.
It's good to you've touched on a few points there, so I'm trying to recall them. So that solution selling. I was having a conversation with someone just before this actually, where they're like, okay, cool. They're looking at their own technology, they're looking internally, thinking, oh, this technology's got the potential to do X, Y, and Z, and they're trying to sell that rather than actually looking what's right in front of them and what their customer needs from that solution point of view. You should always like value focus on that avenue, right? As a founder, because otherwise you're just going to end up going like that whole zigzag community. So I'd love to hear that. You've obviously worked for some. impressive organizations in the past, but do you feel that white glove, that consultative element, that selling, the solution selling, that kind of like real careful process was lacking in the wider industry before you started the business?
That's a tough question to answer. I don't have a strong bird's eye view. But what I can say is that since I've been on this side of the consulting spectrum, right, really focused on the insurance community, and helping drive solutions through insurance companies to small and medium-sized organizations, I can say that there's a lack of large-scale consulting in this area. You have consultants, don't get me wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
when you think about, the big four in IBM and Accenture and those really big names, what they're doing every day with their S&P or Fortune 1000 clients doesn't really get to that small middle market space. And so, really,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing now is a lot of my colleagues from a previous life are starting to jump the fence. They're coming in here. We saw what happened with Kroll, that leadership change and the influx of Dave Berg and his team. So we're starting to see that where we're getting all these large scale consultants come into this community to help drive innovation, to help drive this community forward. And which is, it's prime. We're at that point today where the community itself is at a evolution. It's at a maturity point. We're at a growth point here. And so we're seeing that. And so really, it's been great to be here. It's been wonderful to be able to take all those skills I've learned from large scale and literally hand that to a small business and help them examine the ins and outs. Not just say this is your solution, but actually say, hey, these are your three options for a solution. These are the limitations, whether it's a pro for you're going to be able to sleep at night or it's a con because of the price, and actually have that conversation as we would with that kind of Fortune 1000 type of conversation with those CISOs and risk managers, that upper echelon. So I've really enjoyed the last 8 or so years focused on the small middle market space because I'm able to drive that large scale consulting into the small middle market and watch them actually say thank you and hear them say thank you because of that kind of white glove service. So I do believe we're doing something different from a consultative standpoint. Our feedback we've received from our partners, from our clients, all reflects the same. So it's been a true pleasure to be able to take all that experience and funnel it in here. And even the team we have, our delivery team, some come from the military, some come from other larger organizations, and some have been playing in the insurance community for a while. And so even they have that level of white glove approach that they're able to take from their amalgamated experience and deliver through there. So, really not just falls on my shoulders, but really it's our delivery team that's been able to, pick up from where what we've started and then continue that delivery of it.
Okay, yeah, it's down to the founders to give everyone the vision, get everyone on board, and keep those standards high, right?
Yep.
And I think the satisfaction of hearing your customers say thank you is one of those things that no one even talks about, because then in turn you're going to think, okay, well, are they happy? Did we do a good job? Like, are we doing the right thing here? And I think you kind of do get that. More often than not in smaller businesses or SMBs, because it's a lot less transactional. It's a lot more kind of like value creation and relationship led, right?
Yep.
So I love that. Now you guys are obviously doing something right without kind of flying your flag too high. You're on quite a few panels already. You guys are obviously super busy. And you've only been going for what, 18, 19 months now, something like that.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, we accepted in September 23, and so technically we're on our third calendar year, but really when year to date or the inception to date, we're only about 18, 19 months.
Yeah, well, congratulations. It's good to see. If we dig a little bit deeper into the DFIR world as a practitioner, is there a few common things that you're seeing? Is there like incidents that are just like happening 90% of the time?
It's a great question. What we can say is that humans are still being targeted, right? Humans will
Mm-hmm.
always be the weakest link. We, by nature, trust too easily.
Mm-hmm.
It always goes back to the caveman days. You're getting chased by a dinosaur or some wildebeest, and another caveman starts grunting at you, "Come over this way, come hide in my cave." And And you have to do that, right? We did that for survival early on, and now that type of trust is being abused, right? And so a lot of the issues that we're seeing, like we saw a large number of BECs, business email compromises, comparative to ransomware investigations over the last year. And that's primarily because threat actors have figured out how to bypass multi-factor authentication. And so in doing that, they're targeting the actual human. They're not targeting the technology. They're targeting the human of it, right? They're tricking the human into taking what's on their mobile phone and entering that into their controlled website. So they're capturing username, password, and one-time passcode. And that's, it's by design. They're attacking what we humans built from a linear flow. And then they're further targeting the individual to deceive them because of that. And so we're seeing the human targeted just recently, in the last 30 or so days, we've seen a lot of spoofing happen through Microsoft Teams. So the threat actor creates a similar user account, similar email domain, calls another victim through Teams, and basically represents their help desk. The user or the victim never says, "Can we get on a phone call? Let me call, or sorry, let me get on a video call and verify you hold up your badge," or something like that. Well, we don't see them saying, "Let me call help desk just to validate because I wasn't expecting this call." So we're starting to see abusive technology targeting the humans still, from that effect. So I don't think the social engineering attacks are going to go away anytime soon. And I think that will continue to be the weakest link to gain entry into some of these more sensitive accounts and networks. The other side of that, we're also seeing a lot of vulnerable devices lingering on the internet, whether it's a misconfiguration or outright mismanagement of patching. But we're also seeing the points of entry coming in through those vulnerabilities. Some could be within a matter of days of that proof of exploit code, proof of concept exploit code being released, or it could be months later because the client just wasn't managing their patching cycles. And a lot of that has to do with the small middle market resources, right? You don't have a devoted security team constantly scanning, looking at threat intelligence, and then applying that into their programs. So we're starting to see this kind of divide with the MSP market, the managed service providers, where they can say they can do security, they're representing that to their client, but the client's still getting popped. And when you get back to the brass tacks, there's nothing in the contract that would actually point to they are responsible for security. So I think there's going to be a big disruption there, with separating, kind of the church and state, letting the security firms play security, having the MSP playing the technology, and then having the two work together. I think we'll see something around there, but really it gets back to, how these clients are getting popped, and then how we can come in and help point out, different gaps or ways to structure their program to be a little more managed, and be a little more concerned about who's actually responsible and what they're getting for their dollars. So, to bring that all back, humans are still being targeted from a social engineering standpoint, and we see a lot of vulnerabilities being exploited due to lack of patch management capabilities.
Really insightful. And I'm glad you kind of touched on that. I'm not a practitioner, but I think a lot of them probably you're probably going to just laugh. It's probably so obvious, but 90% of incidents can be probably prevented through preparedness and education, I think, or whether that is from a threat intel or threat hunting kind of standpoint. We did a tabletop last week, and everyone's kind of pointing to the amount of training like internally, like phishing email training. It's just not really kind of value anymore. Actually, let's kind of get everyone in the room. Let's take them behind the scenes and say, look, this is what would happen, and this is
Mm.
the access that we have here and there. So the whole like behavioral element of internal like employees or stakeholders totally needs to change. But then you're right, to contradict what I've just said, you've got the whole kind of like infrastructure and network. If that's not being kept up to speed, then you're just going to be fighting a losing battle. So, what you said around responsibilities and different companies accepting that within their kind of own silos, rather than sitting there and saying, "Oh, we can do X, Y, and Z," and actually they don't do that. They're just now going back to what we said before. They're looking at the buck. They're chasing the money rather than actually what they're good at. more often than not. But that's really really insightful. Is there any kind of advice that you would give to someone who's about to have a really, really bad day on a Friday? They want to go home and like the red lights are flashing. They're kind of they're pulling their hair out. Is there any kind of like two or three tips that you'd give someone in that situation?
I would say stick with it, right? The number one thing
Yeah.
is to stick with it. You know, the outcome here is doesn't matter where you go, whether you leave that same day and you don't want to deal with it, bury your head in the sand, go find a new employer and work with them. Doesn't matter where you go, that problem will still be there, right? We know now that no business is immune to a cyber attack. It's really the majority of attacks are financially driven. And because of that, every business that generates revenue is a target, hands down, right? It's just a matter of when that opportunity turns into that nightmare scenario you're describing. So really, the preparation piece is the most critical, right? You can go home, you can go home and sleep at night. You can schedule the longest vacation possible. You can, with confidence, as long as you know your team is prepared. You have, from a budgeting standpoint, you have the proper security controls in place. The team itself is trained. You have a lot of those scenarios developed and broadcast from a training standpoint to your employees and really focused on promoting that larger word, right? Um, to give it some relation, right? Growing up, you're constantly told to watch out for strangers, be wary of somebody talking to you, keep your head on a swivel, pay attention to your surroundings. That's ingrained in us when we start to walk and we're out on the street in the sidewalks of a city, all the way to, you know, just eating at your local fast food restaurant. You know, be wary of your surroundings. We have to do the same thing in security, in our corporations with security. Just because we're at a business doesn't mean we're not going to have some type of security issue, right? There's still robberies that occur in some businesses. There's still breaking and entering, corporate espionage is still a thing. Those physical issues are still present. They're just becoming virtual now. And so instead of us being so reliant on a computer in a very intimate, nothing will happen type of way, we have to now look at the computer as a conduit of something good can happen or something bad can happen. And so we as a society really need to change our thought process when it comes to that, very similar to how we act and display ourselves in public, right? In a risky area of a city at dusk, you're probably not going to walk down that street. But in the middle of the day, you might. Same thing with computers, right? You're going to question what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, just as you would in a city in an unfamiliar territory. So we really have to have that mindset transition from kind of the I'm using email, it's secure, which by the way, it's not. So I can click this link. We have to now think, why is somebody sending me a link? Should I click it or should I give them a phone call and verify that this is something they intended to send to me and it wasn't a phishing, their email account wasn't compromised, or I'm not being deceived because somebody has transposed, you know, certain characters in that email domain to make it appear like it originated from that person. So really, we as a society need to become much more confident in our ability to train and our ability to detect. So when an issue occurs, our teams are prepared to handle it appropriately. And mind you, the more we prepare, the more we prepare, the less devastating of an outcome can happen, right? So take this into consideration. If all I'm doing is building my IT infrastructure for productivity to make it lightning fast, I'm probably skipping on security. I'm probably skipping on some vital information, the preservation of vital information that could help me in the future. Fast forward, an event occurs. Now, because I've been so focused on technology and productivity, lack of security, these threat actors have crippled my environment. I can't do anything. It's going to take me 3 weeks to rebuild this infrastructure. Whereas if I had slowed down a little bit, looked and applied security principles into my infrastructure, decreased the output a little bit by our employees because of how secure the environment is by design, and something still happened, it probably wouldn't have taken me 3 weeks to rebuild that more secure environment. because I've already put those security procedures in place. I've limited access. I've created role-based controls so that IT doesn't or marketing can't access IT or HR records. I've minimized what the employees can do on their systems so that malware will have a harder time being installed on those endpoints. So taking, those steps today to be able to prepare for the inevitable can actually, one, create more confidence in your team's abilities to respond and detect and deter, as well as your ability to maintain your environment going forward throughout that event without having such a devastating disruption occur.
Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That's what the Navy always told me. And I can sense we're probably going to end up doing another podcast based on the whole psychology of people within security, right, and how the business mindset needs to change. I firmly believe we're in like a new era now, a new technological era where people need to kind of change the way they think. So without going down that rabbit hole and just kind of admitting how paranoid I am all the time, yeah, I think we can maybe look at doing another one. But Steve, it's been a pleasure. Huge congratulations on the success today, and I'm sure if anyone's got any questions, you'll be happy for them to reach out.
Absolutely, absolutely, Charlie. Thank you so much for having me.